Hi, I'm Karen Ollis. I brought you today to Sulphar Springs Park in the South Chagrin Reservation of the Cleveland Metro Parks. Sulphar Springs here, there is a waterfall down there. It's a real intimate, small one, but it's really beautiful. And I like to come here because it is just an out-of-the-way, little secluded, intimate place. And it brings me a lot of comfort to come here. So I wanted to talk to you about comfort, and I wanted to talk to you a little bit more about color spectrum, because as I started to touch on it the other day, I realized that maybe we should go a little further in it. In the book Flow Portal, I do go into color, I do go into season, and the vibrations, and some of it, not in a heavy way, but in a way that just sort of adds in some value to things. I like this particular type of landscape. I love the woodlands, and I love being by water, but it really works for me in the type of landscape, and mountainous areas too. All of that kind of woodlands areas just feed my senses in a good way. Doesn't mean that I don't like to go to a beach or go to a desert. I will visit those things, but I don't want to live there all the time. So that's why I choose the woodlands. And the color frequencies of the greens and the blues really feed me. There's something about how it affects my heart when I just feel so relaxed and I feel so serene, and my heart opens up when I'm in the greens, and how it reflects on the water. When the sun peeks through, you'll start to see a little bit more of that. But that's why I come here in this place particularly, because I love the bedrock and I love how the water moves over it. And when the sun peeks through and it starts those little speculars and those designs of the water flow, it's just incredibly beautiful. And so I walk the bedrock carefully and photograph it, pointing it down or in whatever way I see the shot. So you know that I spend a lot of time in nature, and I did as a kid, but going through a grief process really taught me a lot about the healing elements of nature. I first became aware of it when my sister died. My sister committed suicide when I was 15. It was obviously a sudden, horrific event. And it was someone that I loved very, very dearly. She and I were very close. Jan and I were very, very close, even though we had an age difference. We were just buds, and she was my hero. So losing her was in such a fashion. I will not talk about the backstory to the suicide or the manner in which she committed suicide. Those will remain private. However, I will say that all of that added into the intense experience. So after the funeral, a very dear friend of mine came over, and she and I walked down to a small little lake pondy kind of thing. And my friend Kim somehow or another had an innate sense that the best way to hold the space for me was to be silent. And for a 15-year-old, that's pretty wise. And so she sat next to me by that lake while I just started to let the energy go. And I realized then that water could absorb those things and really wash it away. And it happened to be fall. My sister died on October 15th. It happened to be fall, and those colors were around too. It was like this very surreal type of experience, to feel so much grief and yet be surrounded by such beauty. The two didn't really correlate to me, and but I found that the color spectrum was real interesting to me. Later on, as I would go out into nature, I really gravitated to the greens and the blues. Color has a frequency. We talked a little bit about this. But I would liken it to a musical scale where the reds are the lower frequencies at about 350, and then it goes up through a scale, like a musical scale. Music is measured in hertz, light is measured in nano something or other. I'll have to look it up. But that's not as important as understanding that colors have frequency. You can feel them, you can see them. Not only psychologically, but physiologically, it changes you. So as I worked with color, I realized that the color matches very closely to the chakra system. The chakra system is a system of energy centers within the body. There's 7 main, and then there's 256 in total. It is a very in-depth topic that I won't go into right now to do it justice. But those colors correlate to the chakras. So in your lower, like if your groin is reds, then your emotional in your stomach area is orange. Your thoughts in your solar plexus are yellow, and your hearts are in the greens, and your expression is in the blues, and then your intuition is in the violets and the purples, and then your higher mind is in the whites, silvers, and gold. So keeping that in mind, you can also think of those colors in a seasonal wheel and how that applies. So I'm out all the time. It doesn't matter what the weather is. I'll dress accordingly. And yeah, I wear these things a lot because there's a lot of ticks and I don't like Lyme disease. So I'm constantly, I dress for what I'm doing. This is not a fashion statement. It's a utilitarian. So anyways, I'm out in nature, and I'm out in nature during the seasons because I find it valuable to me. I love the colors of the fall, but I love it too when it's bright and it's sunny, and then you have the blue sky reflecting in the water, and then all the colors of the trees too. It's like, it's confetti. It's wonderful and it's beautiful. And it just like tantalizes me. And I love the shapes. I love the color. I love all of it. I love the smells. I love the sounds. And so I'm out and I'm having a party. So now winter, people don't think that there's a color spectrum to winter. They think it's really drab and everything is dead. The winter has a tremendous amount of color, especially on a sunny day when look at the shadows in the snow. They're blue, they're purples, they're violets. There's all these really wonderful tones, and then there's the silvers and the grays in there. So there's a lot of color out there. So depending on the spectrum that you need, and that will change from time to time, day to day, of what spectrum of color really works for you and for what you need if you're going through a grief process, those colors can come in and fill you up. As I came out of or went through the initial grief process with my sister, I noticed a point in the grief process where I was hyper aware and hypersensitive. It was like raw nerve endings. It was something that was so foreign to me. I didn't really understand it. And as I looked at my life, at 15, all my friends are going through rites of passage of being a teenager, and I was so far removed from it. I was in a different realm. I was in a different dimension. It was just like, oh, you're doing this and you're doing that. And I'm like, whatever. It was like everybody was speaking a foreign language, or I was an alien visiting a different planet. And I just remember being so set apart from it all and not really understanding that. But I was smart enough to start to dialogue with my soul, and I started to drop away the things that didn't align with me, that didn't feel good, that I couldn't tolerate. Within a few short years, well, actually right after my sister's death, there was something else that happened 3 weeks later. There was just a number of things. It was multiple losses stacked one on top of the other. And when that happens, whether it's within a few days, a few weeks, or a few years, what that does is that becomes a compounded grief process. You're never really out of the original one before another one is put on top of it. So, and for me, in my first marriage, the loss of my first baby, neither my husband or I, who we both lost a lot in our life at a young age, and when that happened, neither of us could really deal with it. We both kind of disassociated from it. And when we were told we would not be able to get pregnant again, the hopes for our life collapsed a lot, and our marriage imploded. It wasn't until years later that I really understood what happened with that. But in that compounded grief process and what I went through with not being able to have children, I really had to dialogue with my soul. And it became very clear to me that I had to be an artist. There was no other way around it. I couldn't just work a job. I couldn't just do my art on the side. I had to move forward and be in full creative expression all the time, and somehow find an acceptable way of making money at it. So that became my direction in life. For over 20 years, that's what I did before I surprisingly had my son. But in that compounded grief and that hypersensitivity again, I really noticed that it's there on the surface when it first happens, and then it ducks down. That hypersensitivity ducks down, and then it comes back up at different points in time. When you go through your first significant loss in life, you are forever changed. On a molecular structure, you never look at life the same way. You are forever changed. When you go through a compounded grief process, you are so far removed from the majority of society, and people probably don't understand you, you don't understand them. And so it's really kind of off-putting in that, of finding where your tribe is, or people that can understand it. And people can understand it without words being spoken. So as I went through that and became an artist, I really, really delved into color more and more and more as I explained that. And I found that being out in nature and being in color was filling me up in really good ways. When I went through the death of my husband, I'd been through so many series of grief processes that I kind of knew what was coming. So in that way it was good. But in another way, it also accentuated even more because I was even more aware. So again, the raw nerve endings and the hyper-awareness and the hypersensitivity kicked in. And, here we are in this socio-political landscape that is just horrific. There were people that I was kind of tolerating on the outskirts of my life, trying to give the benefit of the doubt to, well, everybody's got to, have their philosophy and their, right to their opinions and blah, 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 blah. But it became so significantly intolerable for me. I cannot handle the prejudice, the hate, the bullying, just the anger and the conflict and the murder and all of those things. I cannot tolerate it, and I need to surround myself with love and peace. And so I started to eliminate people from my life. I started to eliminate associations, activities, even certain foods I couldn't even handle the smell of. And so I was, trying to eliminate those things, and I did it without explanation. I don't feel like I owe anyone any explanation of why I'm doing what I'm doing. I just know that in dialoguing with my soul, what I need to support myself and to fortify myself. And I would choose love over hate every time. So, and both sides are capable of doing those things. So the reason why I'm talking a lot about grief is it's not to make it my personal story for the rest of my life. It's just that I have a certain amount of experience with this, and I found certain things that work, that are healing for me, that if I can share some information that helps people, then I've done a service. I've been in service, and I love to teach. So this is my way of helping the process along. Because of the socio-political thing that we're in, it is a collective experience. There is a mourning that's going on. There is a grief process that's going on. And we're all in this. We're all grieving something that we used to know. 25 years ago, people used to get along. There was no talk of politics. It was just, people got along and had a good time. Now it's this, which side of the street, people vote blue, and which side of the street people vote red, and so it's become this delineated, division-driven society, and we're grieving the loss of so much. So that's why I've brought these things in here, is to say, if you can get out to nature and feed yourself is really important. To dialogue with yourself, to know what you need, and to be aware of what feels good and what doesn't. And it's okay to eliminate things that don't. But what you want to do is, I think we need to address that in our society, especially American society, we don't know how to grieve. We don't want to see people cry. We don't want to hear their stories. The best you can do is find a grief counseling group. And even in that, sometimes that's sitting in it too much. It's like talk therapy. You end up sitting in a dirty diaper as opposed to actually moving the energy, getting out of the gook. So I heard this thing about Irish culture, where it's keeling or keening, where they really vocalize it, and it's guttural, and it's screaming, it's crying, it's getting that grief out. You'll notice, if you've ever noticed people that, a spouse that's lost another spouse, they end up sick before long, it's because the grief is sitting in their tissues, it's in the fascia, it's in the organs, it's in the lungs. And so getting it out of your body is really important, sounding it out. Putting a pillow over your face, whatever it takes to do it. And I started doing this. I became aware of it. My son said something to me. He goes, Mom, you're going through a lot of physical stuff right now. Maybe you really need an emotional release. And I started to think about it in a context of, I need to get it out of my body. So yeah, exercise helps and all, and breathing and that kind of thing. But the sound piece was really important to me. And sound, I gong, I drum, and I've played music. So, all those things are really important to me, but I didn't really understand the vocalization of it. So I've been working with that, and I go into the back room and I do it in a manner that my neighbors don't think I'm being killed. But I've been really working with that, and I really like it. So if we're getting it out of our body, filling our body with things that work for us, that feel in alignment, that feel good to us, that bring us comfort, I think is one of the wisest things we can do to fortifying ourselves. And that doesn't mean sitting down and drinking a bottle of Jack Daniels. Yeah, there's a time and a place for that, but that repeated thing actually keeps the grief down. It doesn't get it out. So for me, I want to do it in a healthy way as best I can, because I want to be around, and I still want to experience a life of joy. What the hypersensitivity has done for me is it's given me very clear boundaries. There are certain things that I don't want in my life. There are certain things I do not want in my personal life. And as soon as I spot or sense manipulation, if I'm meeting somebody new and I'm getting to know them, I'm watching the behavioral patterns. And if I pick up on, that manipulation or that falsehood, that false face type of thing, or, some kind of an agenda, like a guy that's living with somebody that wants to have a relationship with me, no. Those things will never be acceptable to me. So I've set very clear boundaries to protect my peace, and yet at the same time, I still want to experience certain things in life that I have yet to experience. So I'm open, but I'm guarded, and I'm guarded for a reason. And, especially right now where there's so many people that have agendas and want to have power over people. It's like odd, but you know, there's a lot of it going around because I think people are basically insecure. And having that dialogue with your soul makes you less insecure because you're actively feeding yourself and dealing with yourself. So that's my recommendation, is to allow the grief process out, acknowledge it, honor it, allow the grief out, fill in with things that make you feel good, the colors, the elements in nature, the landscapes that work for you, the exercise, the eating the good foods, reading good books, watching good movies, listening to great music, analog because it's truer in frequency, but surrounding yourself with those things that are beautiful and comforting is really, really important. And if we're going to all raise our vibration and get out of that gooey 3D where all this conflict is, and we are turning the corner, the collective is raising its frequency, we need to continue to care for ourselves and bring that peace into ourselves so we can continue to raise our vibrations up to the 4th dimension, to where the solutions are there, to where we can implement on the 5th dimension and have a better, wonderful world. We can do that, and we're in the process of it. But everybody needs to raise their vibration. Staying down in the lower gook, if that's your choice, that's your choice. But you're, not a whole lot of future there. So raising your frequency, tending to yourself, talking to your soul, and feeding yourself, acknowledging that, I think is really, really important. And it's good for the earth too. So that is my spiel today. Tend yourself, bring yourself comfort. So this is Karen Ollis. I'm at Sulphar Springs in the South Chagrin Reservation of the Cleveland Metro Parks. I'm going to ask you to stay human, stay connected, choose the light, and I'll see you on the trail.